one would assume that there would be something in between Valium and propofol that would be somewhat effective and less dangerous for a person like Michael Jackson.
I think you're absolutely correct. I think another question that might be even more vital to the prosecution down the road here is Dr. Murray's statement that Michael Jackson, after 10 o'clock in the morning, insisted and demanded it. Well, the standard of care is not what the patient demands. It's what's medically necessary for the ailment. And is insomnia an ailment that you use general anesthesia? And I don't think the answer is going to be yes.
Let's talk about what Dr. Murray can be in for now. It is a homicide. It may not have been intentional, but a homicide nonetheless. Certainly there's some other things going on here. He's administering a drug improperly. So what could he be facing?
All right. I think a lot of people hear the word homicide and they think of murder. And as I began this saying, it's not a murder charge, but an involuntary manslaughter. If you look at the jury's instruction and you make a determination of what facts apply to that, it's actually fairly easy for the prosecution to prove. They just merely have to show that there was a failure to act when lawfully demanding so. For example, a lifeguard who sees somebody who's drowning and doesn't act has a duty to do so. That party can be charged with involuntary manslaughter. We have that here, and it's just the improper use of reasonable care or skill when performing a lawful act. And we know that Dr. Murray was lawfully able to administer that drug, but he didn't use the reasonable care or skill when performing it.
Can just apparent ineptitude be a defense for him?
Not in California.
So he is looking at probably being convicted here. I mean, every reasonable assumption would be that there's not much of a defense he can put together here, right?
You know, as a defense attorney, you begin to always look at what possible defenses there are and what other charges there might be also brought by the prosecution. You know, we've talked before on other interviews. Clearly, they're going to bring up the fact that he's writing prescriptions under pseudonyms and somebody else's name. And now he's actually opening those bottles to administer those drugs, so we know he knows that they're fake names on them.
Michael, as a criminal defense attorney, and you had Dr. Murray as a client, how would you defend him?
Well, the first thing I would have done is recommended that he make no statements on YouTube or anywhere else. I also probably would have made sure that he gave minimal interviews at all to LAPD in the beginning, while he has a duty to do so as a doctor. Otherwise, he can lose his license. I think the consequences of him testifying or making a statement to the police are going to be much worse than possibly losing his license. But if I was defending this case and there weren't all of these statements, the first thing I'd look at is Deprivan or propofol, and I'd look at the history of this drug. It's been around since 1989, and the FDA reports that there have been about 440 deaths. But 30% of those deaths have occurred in the last 3 years. So it shows that a lot more doctors are treating people or giving individuals these drugs. And then what I do is I try and find, of those deaths, and I'd be able to subpoena that from the FDA, I try and find people who died outside of the operating room, who were given it by physicians for whatever reason, whether it be insomnia or any other reason. And then I would hopefully find somebody in California, even better if it happened to be in Los Angeles, who happened to have passed away as a result of propofol. And then I'd pull their autopsy report, and then I'd find out were they listed as a homicide. And if they weren't, then I'm going to show that it's really political pressure that the coroner had, and the two similarly situated people were treated differently because of the political pressure, and that the death of an individual doesn't matter whether it's Michael Jackson or a homeless person. It's the conduct of the doctor in the administration of that drug.
And that sounds really good if this is maybe the first instance of somebody like Michael Jackson getting this drug. But I guess the doctor here is also using pseudonyms and different names, and it doesn't look like the whole process is very proper here. How do you handle that problem?
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subpoena from the California Medical Board all the number of doctors who have been disciplined for writing prescriptions under false names, and show that those people practice medicine other than that problem of the false name, they practice medicine appropriately and fairly and within the guidelines of medical standards, and be able to use those people to show just because you write a prescription under a false name doesn't mean you're somebody who's committed a homicide. And I would really separate those charges apart, because once you get rid of the homicide, it's strict liability on the prescription issues, and I just plead my guy out to it, and he's going to lose his license. He's going to lose it administratively, whether he loses it based upon a criminal conviction. But keeping the homicide charge off my client is paramount in this time.
Given your experience now, and with this particular doctor who allegedly was paid, I think, $150,000 a month to prescribe medication for Michael Jackson, this seems to be a common practice among wealthy celebrities. Is this something that you see is really going on behind the scenes that nobody was even aware about, or it's much more widespread than we even thought?
Welcome to Los Angeles, California. It's very widespread here, and the complaints happen on a daily basis. Pharmacies are always reporting doctors in this area for even B-list celebrities who want to think that there's something that they're not, and they're being watched. People are cautious about image, and people are conscious about what people think about them.
My guest is Michael Kraut. He is a criminal defense attorney in Los Angeles. He's a former prosecutor and deputy district attorney, and you can find him at the Kraut Law Group. Well, Michael, we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and filling us in today.
No problem.
This is Scott Drake. You're watching the Legal Broadcast Network. This is Scott Drake, and we know that as an attorney, you're very busy. That's why we have more content just like this at your fingertips, conveniently located at LegalBroadcastNetwork.com. Thanks for watching.